this whole thing is a lifelong process. I feel like you never stop learning. You never get to the point where you don't need to, keep reading and keep taking classes and training. It's constant.
Welcome back to the Indie Spotlight Podcast, Season 2, Episode 7. I'm your host, Samuel L. Fronsman, and on this show, I want to help pull back the curtain and discuss the process of independent filmmaking by talking to some of the brightest and most talented individuals in the industry. Last week, I spoke to the amazing actress and writer and director, Heather Bales. Today, I have another fantastic actress on the show, Nicole Yost. So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining me here today. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself more for those who might be unfamiliar with your work?
Sure. Well, hi, I'm Nicole Yost. I'm an actor. I do voiceover work, print stuff, theater, commercials, all that kind of thing. So really a jack of all trades, master of none. But yeah, that's me.
So, how long have you been into acting?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. I started in theater when I was 7 years old. I kind of grew up in that world. A lot of people that I knew, that's what they did. They were theater people and entertainment people. And I got used to it. It almost became second nature to me in a way. And I mean, from then, it's just what I always did.
So, what would you say some of your biggest inspirations are in terms of where you like to draw influence in your acting style?
Oh wow. Okay. I have a few. I love Kate Winslet, for example. I think she's awesome. If I could be her, I would. I'm a big Audrey Hepburn fan. I mean, so many. I couldn't even tell you how many. But really, anyone and everyone. I try to learn from everything I see.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just earlier today I was recording another video for the channel where I was talking about mainly I was talking about directing, but it can be applied to really any aspect of film, and that's drawing your influences from just everything that you see within your life, and not just in movies and television, but other forms of art and media and just life experiences as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm a better actor now than I was when I was a teenager because I've had a lot more life experiences, a lot more than I did when I was, 16 doing this type of thing. So, yeah, I 100% agree with that.
So, what are some of the biggest changes that you've had to make in the way that you deliver a performance between your more theater experience versus whenever you started getting into film and television work?
Sure. Well, for theater, you have to be big. You're playing to the whole audience, you're playing to the person in the back of the room, and they need to be able to both hear and see what you're doing. In film and television, obviously that's not the case. You're playing towards the camera. The camera's right in front of you. So you have to train yourself to take all of those big movements and make them a lot smaller. And that's really it's really hard to do. Sometimes I still find myself struggling with that. I feel like it's a lifelong thing, really, especially when you are someone who can flip between theater and film and television. So I would say that's the hardest thing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I work with a lot of actors too that they do bounce between theater and film and kind of changing up their performance between. I talked about how I had Heather on the show last week, and she does a lot of theater work as well in terms of some of her film experiences, as well as Stephen Shanti is another guy that I work with a lot, and he does his one-man show that's absolutely phenomenal, but it's such a huge difference when I went to go see him perform his one-man show versus when he's working with me in one of my films. And just it's cool watching how he can do that, and the versatility there. What kind of direction would you say helps you in terms of being on set in order to take something that's maybe that you're delivering very high energy and then work that back internally and deliver something more subtle and nuanced for a camera?
I mean, I do best when I know what you want. And I know it's hard for some directors, especially ones that aren't actors or, maybe haven't had acting classes and whatnot. They don't necessarily understand how to convey to the actor what they want. And part of it is our job to interpret what they're saying. And sometimes that's hard. But for me personally, I like a range of what you're looking for. Even if you don't entirely know, give me some ideas because I could pull from that and draw from that as needed. There are some people that don't necessarily need it done that way, but for me personally, give me some well direction and I can go from there. But and it's easier to go big and pull it in versus starting super small and then being prompted by the director to make it more. Because you're becoming that person. You are that person. So you have to be able to have more than one plan for that person. So,
Yeah, I definitely as a director, that speaks volumes to me, because it is harder to try to for with an actor getting the performance bigger and higher energy. What I like to do a lot of the time, just in general, in terms of notes that I like to give, is I like to give what's referred to as a playable note. And so, like, I use this as an example of, let's say, there is a performance that is very big, very over the top, and I want to say, let's bring that down, let's scale it back. I don't ever talk in terms of, hey, let's bring the energy down or let's do it quieter. What I like to say is, deliver the lines as though you're trying to hide your anger or your excitement, or say whatever the emotion is. You're trying to hide that with your scene partner. You don't want them to know that that's what you're feeling. And then that you
yeah. Love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's something that I've worked on over the years, between some of my earlier projects. One of some of my earliest short films, I did the most horrendous style of directing you can imagine. I did line readings, which is like frowned upon. I
Mm-hmm.
And so learning how to communicate the vision, better, and trust the actors is definitely, it's a lifelong process of always improving project to project.
Right. This whole thing is a lifelong process. I feel like you never stop learning. You never get to the point where you don't need to, keep reading and keep taking classes and training. It's constant for sure.
Absolutely. Always, always. And speaking of learning and education, in your background, you used to actually also be a teacher. Now, what did you teach, and were you still involved at all in acting at all at that time?
So I'm a trained Montessori teacher. So, it's a different form of education using manipulatives to help children learn all aspects of school, school subjects. I taught everything from preschool to sixth graders. And yeah, that was challenging, especially the COVID pandemic years. Teaching with manipulatives when you're not in a classroom, very hard. But I actually did not act through most of my teaching career. I taught for about 15 years on and off. It wasn't until after COVID that I started getting into it again because I just felt this pull to do it. And at that time, I honestly didn't think that it would be something that I would go back to doing as heavily as I did when I was younger. But it's kind of amazing how when things are meant for you, they just happen whether you planned it or not. So, yeah. And since then I've stopped teaching and this is what I do.
That's awesome. So, kind of getting into that a little bit more, what was that transition like, and what were some of the earlier roles that you got when you started getting back into acting after teaching?
The transition into some aspects, the transition wasn't that different. I mean, you're putting yourself out there as a teacher. You're, communicating with students, you're teaching lessons, and you need to change on a dime what you're doing. Maybe the child doesn't understand, or the subject you're teaching is just falling flat. And that transition back into acting honestly has been pretty seamless because you're doing that with a character. Even if you're doing an audition, or you've booked a role, you need to be able to change on a dime what you're doing. So that aspect of it has not changed. um I forgot the rest of your question.
Oh no, that's good. I was asking about like some of the earlier roles too that you got, and how did you land those parts when you were getting back into acting?
So my one of the first roles I got when I started doing this again, and it's actually one of the most important ones to me, I think it always will be. It was for a short film called The Breakwater, where I play a mother who visits a lighthouse every year to spend time with the ghost of her son who's passed away. And in my actual real life, I too have a son who passed away as an infant. And that role, which was my first, big thing once I started doing this again, I did some background work and stuff before that just to get back into it. But that particular role was so important to me, and it showed me that, I can push myself, because that's a hard thing to do. When you're an actor, you put your whole self into a character, and when the character aligns with your real life in a way, that's both super exhilarating and super terrifying. So, to me, that even though that was my first, time back into it, that will always be the most important role to me. And yeah, I wouldn't be here, I don't think, if I didn't start with that.
Yeah, I I've talked to a lot of people in the industry that even a makeup artist that I work with a lot, and she every time somehow I always seem to strike a chord in my scripts where she says, "Hey, this is pretty dark, but I feel really connected and attached to this project, and it's almost to me like a form of therapy to be involved in
It
it."
is.
And
Oh yeah,
so
acting is super therapeutic. It can be. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it is, and it's something too that we had a good conversation too with that the other day, which is, and she even said like art to her is just the way that people are able to process life, and especially some of the more upsetting and the traumatic experiences that we go through, and how art is able to allow us to express some of those feelings and be able to get those across.
Absolutely.
So, being a parent in general, how has that kind of influenced and shaped your perspective whenever you step into a character?
That is a good question. So, being a parent is hard in any day, and being a working parent is hard no matter what job you're doing. But I feel like there's a different level of difficulty with it when you're an actor. Most jobs 9 to 5, you're coming home every day, you get to see your kids. Um, in an actor's case, sometimes you're gone for a couple days, or, it could be a couple weeks or a couple months, who knows. And there's a lot of that, at least for me, there's a lot of that, guilt there if I have to leave my daughter for a while because I have to go do my job. So that part is tough. And as far as bringing it into acting goes, if I'm doing an audition where I'm playing someone's mother, or a commercial where I'm, being a mother selling, I don't know, Downy fabric softener or something, um, I have all those experiences with children that I can bring into my own auditions, not just with my own child, but all of the students that I've taught throughout the years. So I think that makes a big difference in where I'm coming from in an audition or in a role versus maybe someone who hasn't had that same experience.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, about how we do tend to pull in a lot of our real life experiences into what we do. A couple weeks ago, when I had Adam Joseph Turner on the show, he's a homicide detective, and with that, that brings a lot of different perspective into the types of characters that he plays, and a lot of times he actually ends up in the role of a killer. And so he's even talked about how to him it's almost therapeutic of he looks across the table interrogating some of these people, and it does over the years eat at him. And then when he gets into a part, he's able to let that out and have this deeper understanding of those not great people, those bad darker people, and he's able to then bring that into a performance.
I think life experience sometimes is vastly underrated. It's amazing how much you absorb of your life that you don't realize you can put into another character or, an audition situation, for example, until you're faced with it. And, it's easy to look back and go, "Oh, I can relate to this person," or like in his case, the homicide detective. That's amazing. That's the type of stuff that really helps set you apart when you know how to tap into that. And not everyone can, and not everyone has the same life experiences, obviously, as you do. So it's always, or anybody. So it's always important to be able to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
So, over the years, what were some of the biggest lessons that you've had to learn as an actor from starting out to where you're at today, where this is now your full time career?
Had to learn. I'm still learning. You never stop, right? Honestly, the unsteadiness of the career as a whole, which I knew that from, my younger days, and from watching other people in my life who, do this career or similar careers in the industry. But I don't think you ever get used to the fact that there's no consistency in this. You either are working a ton or not at all, or maybe a little here and there. And as an adult, it's so much harder to accept that, I guess. So for me, I feel like that has been the biggest challenge, where I came from, a steady career in education. I always knew, what to expect. I knew I had a paycheck, and that's how it was. So that transition was and still is probably the most difficult for me. That, and back to the whole theater, reining it in situation, which I think I'm doing way better at, but it takes time, a lot of time.
Absolutely. I read a book on acting a while ago, which I like to read on every aspect of filmmaking and acting in particular, coming from the perspective of a director, is I want to better understand where an actor is coming from and be able to bring that into the way that I give direction. I try to be an actor's director as much as possible. And the one thing that stuck out to me between acting for stage versus acting for film is that the biggest challenge is, if you started in theater, you're really unlearning a lot of things that were hammered into you
Yes.
early on.
Yes. Yes, you have said, I guess you've said what I've been trying to say this whole time, to be honest with you. It's a lot of unlearning that is ingrained in you. I love that you're that kind of director because there needs to be more people like you. But no, for sure, unlearning, that is the best way to describe it, and I'm still in that unlearning process, I think.
Yeah, and well, and it's like you said too, is we're always learning and unlearning bad techniques. I even even directing like some of those earlier projects, some of the techniques I tried to employ that didn't work, I had to say to myself, okay, well, this is what worked, this is what didn't, and going into the next project, this is what I'm going to keep doing, and this is what I need to start staying away from, to be able to produce better work. And that's even what the podcasts are for too. Is it's a great space for us reflecting on what we've learned and what we're continuing to work on for other people that are interested in getting involved in film, to really kind of see that, and hopefully we're inspiring people too, to get involved no matter where they're at.
I like it.
So, kind of sticking with that again, if you were to talk to a younger Nicole Yost, a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give to you that you now know, that you wish you knew when you were younger?
Ugh, don't worry so much about, what people think of you. Especially in this industry, you do or don't book the role for all kinds of reasons, some of which you can't control. Like, I am super short. If you know me, I am 5 feet tall with like a 6 foot tall attitude. And I can't control my height. I'm not going to get any taller. I have to be okay with that. So I think I would tell the younger me to just be okay with who you are, because it really doesn't matter. You can only control what you can control. And what you look like is not that controllable. You can't control your height. You can only control how people perceive you, being a good person, being on time, and being honest. Yeah.
I love that you say that, and that actually, it very much reiterates and hammers down on things that, other actors that have been on the show have, said. Timothy J. Cox, when he was on the show, he said that early on his acting teacher told him that, hey, you are going to be a character actor. Basically was blunt to his face and said, you don't have the leading man looks, but you can have a very fruitful and flourishing career in supporting character parts. And he actually ran with that, and he's been in so many different things, and he's had the experiences of getting to play everything from an old grizzled detective, to being a talent agent in another movie, to being a professor in another movie. And he's never the leading John Wick action hero, but he gets to try out so many different and unique characters that he just has so much fun with. So it's finding what you're good at, and who you are as an actor. I find that
Right.
is huge.
Knowing your type. I mean, they say know your type, and there's reasons for that, for what you just said. He's never going to be, a leading man. I am never going to be the leading lady. I am the nurse. I'm the funny best friend. I'm your mean boss. And I'm okay with that. That's who I am, and that's what I do, and let's go.
Yeah. Well, something else you said speaks to me as well. That you mentioned that you are on the shorter side of things. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I am also very much on the short end of the stick. I'm 5'4", and so I also, whenever I do try out to act, because I also do like to act in other people's films, or I'll cast myself even, and I even typecast myself for my own movies. So whenever I'm doing a film, for instance, I'll bring up the one I just did, In the Hands of Fate, and I don't ever want to cast myself to be a huge major character. I like to cast myself in a part that, I know that is the type of part that I fit. And in this case, I played the dopey but loyal goon for Rocco. I played Larry. And there's a scene where, and this was all strategic, I cast an actor who's 7 foot tall to have a scene with me where he throws me into a door, and then from there throws me to the ground, and later refers to me, in some various not so politically correct joking manners of my height and my appearance. And I did that all very specific because of that, because I know I can look at myself and I can say, look, I am never going to be the badass in the movie, but I can be comedic relief, or I can just be the short little sleazy guy, which is what I'll be playing in this other mobster movie that I'm going to be filming here soon with Brandon McWhorter and Five Stage Film Commission. That I'm really looking forward to.
I love that. It's good to know. It's good to be honest with yourself in this career, in this industry field, whatever you want to say. And it's good that you know that about yourself. I am the same way. I will probably never play the badass, but I get a lot of Latina cop auditions. That was a surprise to me. I did not see myself that way, but clearly enough other people did that I'm leaning into it. I'm actually going to start taking I'm gonna go learn to go to the gun range and actually learn how to shoot a gun in a believable way. I don't know how, because I need to do that. So it's good that you know that about yourself. I do too,
Right.
and it's okay.
Right. And so part of that too is, when you do get cast, and especially like you mentioned, I think that's really interesting you bring that up about, going so far as, learning the proper techniques of shooting a gun, since you do get parts like that of being, in law enforcement, for instance. What are some of the other techniques that you have to get into character and find the character before you ever step onto set?
Well, I like to research the type of character, especially if it's somebody foreign to my life. I've had a few auditions for homeless people. Like I said, the Latina cops, several of them. I had one as a rabbi, and I am not Jewish, but I have a lot of friends who are, so I actually went to them and I had to ask them, what demeanor would this person have? Am I doing something wrong? Is there something, stereotypical that, a rabbi would do that I don't know about, because that's just not something that I'm exposed to very much. So I like to, go out and research and figure things out. I will watch films from other actors and actresses that I know that I like that maybe have done a similar thing. Or better yet, if I don't like them, I can pay more attention to what they're doing, versus who they are doing it, if that makes sense. So I'll actually be the opposite and find the actors that I can't stand watching, if I know that they're doing something I need, because I'm actually going to pay attention to their process and, the little quips of their character versus, them. And that has really helped me. So I do a lot of research that way. I keep up on skills I already have. I ride horses. I've been riding horses since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I make sure that that's a skill that I practice, because I have had instances where I need that. I actually did a pilot episode of a TV show last month, and part of the reason I booked it was my experience with horses. So definitely keep up on the skills you already do have and learn more. Yep.
That's some great advice too. I love that you bring that up, and it reiterates what we've talked about too in earlier episodes of, if you have a special talent or a special base of knowledge, to really kind of focus on it and try to hone in on that and hone in on those skills. But then also, when you are researching a character that you maybe not be as familiar with, to do that extensive research. And I like that you look at you even look at actors or movies that you may not like, but there's something that you can take from it. There's always something you can learn and take from everything, even if you don't particularly enjoy it. And I think that's great advice for people.
I mean, you take from film, television, you take from life. What is your weird neighbor down the street who always comes over doing? What about, your Uncle Bob who, is always sad all the time, or always has, bad news because their downer type or whatever. Take from those people in your life, or the lady at the airport, or the mom dragging her kids around. I have a little keep notes tab in my phone, and if I see something or hear something that sticks out to me for some reason, I will put who or the situation and what they said. For example, airline stewardess, um, giggled so hard that she snorted and then made five other people laugh. Whatever it is. And then I put that stuff there. So if I ever need just that little something extra, I look in there and I see what I got.
I love that. I do the exact same thing. In fact, there's and I do it more so as the perspective of a writer, where I have a note sheet that I'm working on a script for. It won't be for a few years when I actually write it, but I get ideas now. And so what I'll do is I'll hear somebody say something, and it's, I call it, quotes for the con man, which is the working title of this. And I'll just mark in those quotes. I'll type in, so and so said this might be good for the scene. Or I'll read about a story. There was a story I read out of a true crime book, and it was one of those true crime books where there was dark stories in it, but also humorous stories. And there was one in particular that dealt with the most ridiculous robbery of a fast food restaurant you could imagine. That it was absolutely hysterical, and ends with the guy hanging off of a fence while a dog is trying to bite at his ankles, and he basically lost all the money, and the cops are all surrounding him. And first of all, you can imagine that's the character I'm planning to cast myself in.
Oh yeah. No, I figured that.
Right. And so, but I didn't want to forget that scene. So whenever I read that book, and I read that particular story out of it, I literally rewrote it all down note for note in a notebook that I keep with everything else for that. So it's always observe and always keep notes of these types of things. You never know where you might be inspired for in the future for something.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. It's good. It's important. I don't know if enough people do that, to be honest with you.
And and it's something that you're right, probably not enough people do it, but it's a great habit. Once you start getting into it, you have a lot of fun with it, I find.
Right. I was gonna say that it's hard to get into remembering to even do that, especially in like the, speed of life that we all have these days. But I love that. That's great.
So kind of sticking to with that whole notion of researching and taking notes and developing and building the character. What were some of the more challenging roles that you've had to play that took a lot more preparation and studying? I know you mentioned like a rabbi, for instance, that or different roles like that. What are some of those characters that were a lot more research heavy roles?
Oh boy. Well, so I mentioned before the short film that I did, The Breakwater. That wasn't so much research heavy as it was a lot of like mental um gymnastics I had to go through to not basically cry cry through the entire film, but I didn't, and that showed me how strong I could be and how capable I was. So for me, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do that way. And as far as research goes, yes, definitely the rabbi.
So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit away from just, the actual performance side of things. But what advice would you have for actors in terms of, getting cast and going through the auditioning process for films, both, on an independent level or, even bigger stuff?
Ooh, you have to be comfortable with no. Every audition you do, I mean, you're probably not going to book it, to be honest, and that is really hard. And you have to be comfortable with the fact that silence is an answer. And no, you don't know how you did. You don't get feedback, and that's probably the most frustrating piece of it. The only way that you know you're doing, you know, okay is you're still getting auditions. You're very, I mean, very irregularly going to have somebody tell you, I liked these things you did, I didn't like these things you did. It's happened to me maybe 3 times since I started doing this full time, about like 4.5 years ago. So you just have to be comfortable with silence as an answer. And that's really hard to do. And I don't think that that comes easily, and it takes a lot of time. Sometimes I still get frustrated with it. Even earlier today I was feeling kind of blah because I've had a lot of auditions recently and I've heard nothing from any of them. So silence is an answer and the answer is no, and you have to be okay with that and you have to move on. But it's equally as important to, if you feel crappy about it, okay, like let yourself feel that way. Just don't marinate in it. Don't stay there. But, feel bad about it, get mad, do whatever you need to do and then move on. So that's going to be my day tomorrow, moving on from all those feelings that I had earlier today. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that it reminds me of something that Heather talked about last week, where she said that it's almost like getting in the habit of submit and forget. Um,
Absolutely. Heather and I just had this conversation a couple weeks ago when she was feeling sort of similarly and we were, talking back and forth about that very thing. And that's exactly what it is. Submit it and forget it. Move on. You might hear something a month later. That's happened to me. Um, I want to say it was last April. I auditioned for a film and I auditioned and I forgot it and I moved on, and I log all my auditions and submissions because I just like to know, what it's for and when I did it, what character, or if it's print or commercials or film, whatever. But then I got an email in June that was like, "Hey, congratulations, you are playing the nurse," and I completely forgot I even auditioned for it, which is great, but also equally as important because hey, I forgot I moved on already from that. So yeah.
right. Yeah. It so it's from a perspective of a casting director, and this is why I always love asking this question about auditioning, because I'm usually on the other side of the table when it comes to it. And I can say that, I come to understand reasoning behind why most casting directors are not going to respond to somebody if they didn't get the part. They're only going to notify those who they did cast. But I've always tried to come at it from the perspective of, I will, even if it ends up being the same copy and paste message over and over again, and all I do is just change the "dear so and so" at the top of it. I always try to make sure that I let everybody know that tried out that they didn't get the part. But I also understand why some people don't. It's hard to tell somebody. It's really hard to tell somebody no, especially if I've had so many experiences where I've auditioning a part and there's like 2 or 3 people that it's really tough to choose between, because I really like all of them,
You want to
and
put them all in there and you can't.
yeah, there's one part and I gotta go with my gut instinct. And it's not as hard if I can tell somebody, hey, you didn't get this part, but I really like your acting and I really like your look and I really think that you'd be great in this other project as this other character, so I am casting you, just not for the part that you were trying out for. I don't mind doing that, but
Right.
it is tough. And then I know sometimes, even as a independent producer, and so far none of my projects have been high enough budget to where they've been profitable or anybody has really made any money off of it. And so it's always been just, people coming onto set on the weekend for fun, volunteering because they want to be in the movie. And so even a non-paid project, I'll get a lot of submissions like really fast. Like I'll have 20 people trying out for one character, to where I actually have to shut down the casting call, so that way I can, to balance my day job with it, so I can understand where something bigger, especially a paid project, how many people must be trying out to try to get back to all those people.
Oh
It can
yeah,
be
no,
tough.
it's not possible. And I feel like from the casting side, it's probably almost harder to tell someone no than just to tell them nothing. But from the acting side, it sucks sometimes. And
Yeah.
and that's why you have to be okay with no answer is an answer.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes I wish I would get some sort of feedback, but don't we all wish that? I know it's not possible. I just feel like maybe on Actors Access there should be a little box that they could just quickly check off maybe the things you did well or poorly or something, and that's just integrated into how it all works. But that'll never happen. That's just a
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I might actually try that, and that might be really tough for me, because I push myself to the point where I know I'm gonna let everybody know, and I always tell that. I say, hey, look, I know a lot of people are not gonna tell you if you didn't get the part. I will. So when I select who's playing the part, you'll know whenever, if I'm the casting director, I will take the time to send you an email to let you know, hey, you didn't get the part. Um, and then that way you don't have to think about it, worry about it anymore, what have you. But that's something I don't do that I could try, and it might be even tougher on my end to do, but it could be beneficial, where I could say, hey, you didn't get the part, and this is what you did well, and this is what you didn't do well. But I don't know, I'm scared. I don't want to come off as like a jerk if I say, hey, you didn't get the part because I didn't like your delivery on this line. I don't know.
well, I mean, how could you do that? I feel like you could do like a little checkbox situation, like, you know, lighting was poor or whatever, or, lines were how would you phrase that? Like, um, not delivered as the character, I don't know, not delivered as the character should. I don't know, like a little checkbox, check it off situation. I mean, that would be good, and it'd be quick. Do like a top 5 of things or something, I don't know.
It's definitely an interesting approach. Something to think about for sure. Now, I have a different question. This is out of curiosity, just with the auditioning process in general, because I see it. I have a lot of actor friends, but they all tell me, or even when I help them with their auditions, because I like to help people out with their auditions too, that I'm friends with. Thank you. But is my question is, how many of these auditions are self tapes?
For me, 99.9% of them. I think I've had maybe 3 in-person auditions in the last 4 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and
That's crazy.
I get to audition for stuff nowhere near where I live. I have agents in multiple markets, so I get to audition for the things in Atlanta, even though I don't live there, or New York City, even though I don't live there, because of, self-taping. And from the actor's perspective, it's great for that, but it also kind of sucks because you don't get to get in the room like this. Even a live Zoom audition, I think I
Mm-hmm.
had one ever of them.
Wow.
And, I feel like you get to know someone better, even if it's a live Zoom, situation or an in person situation, more so than your self tape, even though you can do your self tape, as many times as you want and change what you want and, all that stuff, which is great. But I don't know, there's something to be said for the live in person aspect of it. But it just doesn't happen that much anymore. From casting, I mean, I'm not surprised. It's probably easier.
Well, you know what? As a casting director, I'm gonna hard disagree. I hate self tapes. I absolutely I don't. the only times that I ever take self tapes, or like I've had instances where um, I had time slots that were available, but something came up like a family emergency, but so and so wanted to try out really bad, and I'm like, well, uh, I need you to have an audition in by this day because I need to make a decision by that day. I understand if the time slots that are left for a live audition don't work. You can send in a self tape if you want, and that's the exception to the rule. And like what you just mentioned, like a live audition over Zoom or over Discord. That's how I always do it, and the reasoning behind it is it's twofold. To me, the pro of doing things remotely and even why I can see the pro of a self tape is that it it is more convenient on the casting director's end of it, and it's more convenient on the actor's end of it too, in terms of not needing to travel out to a physical location for maybe to read lines for 10 minutes and then okay next. So, but you get that. You get the best of both worlds when you do it over a video call, because you still have that, like, I'm in my bedroom right now, you're at your home, and we're able to have a live conversation. And the biggest thing to me is I don't just want to know how you interpret the lines, because that's great. And I always have the first read through be, how did you interpret the character? Just read it however you feel. This is the first read through. Then I have you read the sides again. On the second time, I will give you some form of direction to change how you deliver it.
Imagine that, live direction. That's the type of stuff I'm all about. You don't have to
Exactly.
make it up on your own with like this much information on, a breakdown. Yeah, I'm with you there. I really,
100%.
I
And to me, what boggles my mind is it's more beneficial as a director that I it's I want an actor who's going to be able to handle direction well, and that's part of the auditioning process for me. Is I want to see, let's say even if you did it perfect the first time, and I've had that happen where someone just read it and instantly got it, and I'm like, oh well, I'm gonna just give them direction to change it to do it wrong, so I can just see that, because I wanna at least see.
Oh, you wanna work with people who can take direction. You don't wanna work with someone who has an ego, which a lot of people do, especially in like the bigger budget situations. I can tell you from personal experience. It doesn't matter what level you're at. Check your ego at the door, dude, because at the end of the day, and for career longevity, you just can't. And I feel like that's very easily, seen when you're giving someone direction live and they don't take it or don't want to or think they know more than you. And this is all stuff I've seen, by the way. Um, so yeah, I there's definitely benefits to the live stuff. I wish I personally got more of it. I don't. It's all self tapes. Yeah.
Try out for one of my movies.
I think I'm going to. I think I'm going.
um, so kind of sticking with that whole dynamic between an actor and a director, because for me, as a director, I find that the relationship between an actor and a director on a movie set is the most important creative and collaborative relationship that you're gonna get. The only thing that even can come close to it would be the director and the director of photography, but even then I still put the actor-director dynamic above that. What would you say makes for a good dynamic between yourself and the director of a project?
Honesty. The ability to speak honestly, freely. If you like what I'm doing, if you don't like what I'm doing, I need to hear it. I don't like people that like I hate this phrase, that beat around the bush. I hate it, but I don't like people who do that. I think honest, one-on-one conversations about what you as the director want or need from me or, whoever is the way to go. And I feel like for me personally, I'm very open. I have no problem having dialogue, collaborating with the director or whatever. And again, I think this goes back to my ego comment. If you don't have one, it makes the director actor relationship better. Whereas if you do, you're just putting in an artificial, roadblock that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, 100%, and especially as a director, that's huge for me. And I'm fortunate that I do have a lot of close friends that are actors that now I can write scripts and already know who I'm gonna cast. And a lot of the people that I bring back, they're obviously I like to work with them for their talent, but I also like to work with them because they're easy to work with and we have a good rapport back and forth.
I feel like that's almost more important than talent in a way. I mean, yeah, you need to have ability, but I feel like that's different. I'm actually reading this book right now. Hold on. It is called Talent is Overrated. I don't know this author and I'm not plugging this in any way. I'm just telling you this is what I'm reading right now. And it's all about this very thing, how, it's more important to be teachable and directable like you said than pure talent, and certainly not egocentric. Yeah, absolutely.
100%. So, as always, before we wrap everything up with the podcast, I always like to ask this fun little question of, imagine if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only bring 3 movies with you to watch for the rest of your life. What 3 movies would you bring with you and why?
Okay. I laughed when I saw when you give me some of the questions ahead of time. I laughed when I saw this one because I'm a huge Moulin Rouge fan. I love Ewan McGregor. He's behind me actually right here. This is us. And I love him to death. So I have to say Moulin Rouge definitely would be there. I'm also keeping in that girly spirit. I love The Holiday. I mean, Jude Law is near and dear to my heart. I am one of those people, absolutely. So I definitely would have that. And then Audrey Hepburn is my spirit animal. I love Breakfast at Tiffany's, but really anything she does, if I could be her, I would. So I have to say Moulin Rouge, The Holiday, and Breakfast at Tiffany's. Maybe not necessarily in that order. Okay, maybe Moulin Rouge would definitely be the first. Yeah.
That's awesome. I always love getting kind of the diverse perspectives on what people would bring. I've had everything from, believe it or not, one person actually, only one person ever said Castaway, which is surprising. But I've had 2 people pick Django Unchained. So
Interesting. That is not one that I would want on a desert island.
yeah. Oh well, I was really shocked when Adam said, "Yeah, I'd bring The Shining," and I'm like, if you're
What?
I'm like, I love The Shining, but when you're isolated and lonely on an island by yourself, watching a movie about how isolation will drive you insane, well, to each their own.
Yeah, that's a choice. I mean, right? We all make choices as actors, and that is definitely his choice. I can't say that would be mine. I like feel good movies,
Yeah. Well, then
especially if
after
I'm
that,
stuck alone.
then after that, he ended up picking a comedy because he said, "I'll need something to lighten the mood."
Oh yeah, I would think so. I would think so. Yeah. What comedy did he pick? Do you know? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of, especially now that we're already on episode 7 of the second season, which season 1 only had 3 episodes. So that means I'm 10 episodes deep into the series. So I don't remember. Uh, yeah, sometimes they stick out to me. Sometimes I don't. I almost need to like bring a list because, and it's funny because Heather had this idea last week where she said, well, what did everyone else bring so that way I know what not to bring, so that way when we're all on this island together, we can all have a bigger list of movies and not have duplicates. And I said, well, that's bold of you to think that I'm putting you all together, but it's an interesting notion.
I would not have thought that. Leave it to Heather to come up with that. I mean, I'm with her now that you said that. We definitely need to write a master list so we don't have duplicates, assuming we are all stranded together. But then we wouldn't be alone, so that would do that. I guess The Shining doesn't matter.
Yeah. See, there you go. Then you can have a very wide and eclectic taste. I might have to do that if I get some time. But that's the thing is I don't want to tell everybody what it is because well, two reasons. One, it means that you can watch all the other episodes to know. And two,
That's fair.
yeah. And two, I don't want to necessarily influence what you're going to say. So it's kind of, because to me, it's interesting to see if there are duplicate answers.
You should do a season ending recap and then do it then. I don't
That
know. Release the list. Just a
that would
thought.
be interesting.
Has anyone ever picked an animated movie? I'm just curious that you could think of. Like, I don't know, an
Oh,
animated movie.
I know for a fact somebody did, but now I can't remember what it was or who picked it. But I know for a fact somebody picked an animated movie.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll,
Nice.
we'll have the we'll have to do the recap at the end of season 2. I'll even throw in the 3 episodes from season 1. We'll like add in every single movie that's going to be on this island.
I think you should.
Cool.
That'd be fun.
So, real quick before we close everything out, thanks again for coming on the show. Where can people follow
You're welcome.
you?
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Where are people able to follow you to keep up with your work?
So I am on Instagram. Um, I have like 245 followers, which sounds ridiculous, but I'm so proud of it. It is slowly, organically growing. So if you want to follow me on Instagram to help me raise my numbers a little bit, it is n.marie.yost. Marie for Marie. I don't know why I did that originally, but now I'm not changing it. So n.marie.yost. I believe my picture right now is with my voiceover mic right there, and me. So yeah, follow me for more crazy things that I might do or say, because I'm fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. So I want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in today for season 2, episode 7 of the Indie Spotlight podcast. Remember, if you're enjoying this content and you want to learn even more about independent filmmaking, make sure that you follow us on Spotify, as well as if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe, that you like, and that you turn that bell on for notifications so you don't miss any content on Frons Productions. And in case you missed it, go back and check out our last couple episodes for even more great acting advice where I spoke to the likes of Adam Joseph Turner as well as Heather Bales. Anyway, that's all that I have for you here today. Remember, until next time, that's a wrap.